rousing speech, I'm supposed. So I'll try my best. So it's very interesting that there's a little Freudian slip there, Barbara. You called Albion State Correctional Facility Albion University. I guess I did learn a lot there. But I did spend 3 years at Albion Correctional Facility for Women, which really changed my life. This would not be my career if I hadn't done that. I learned a lot about what it means to have opportunity and then pass that on to others. I want to thank the organizers of this event for inviting me, certainly Barbara as the chair of EXiT, and all of the signatories and members of EXiT, and a special thanks to Kendra and to Akasua, who shepherded me through this entire process so that I could arrive here with some coherent thoughts in my mind. I promise that even though, and you can blame the organizers, I was given 25 minutes, I will not keep you here not 1 minute longer than 24. Only kidding, be about half of that. This is nothing to sneeze at, the work that you're doing. It's been decades since we've been trying to figure out how we got here to this system of mass incarceration. Since the early 2000s, even before, we've talked about the unsustainability of mass incarceration. We've broken down all the ways that the justice system contributes. We've connected dots to other social systems, housing, education, employment, and healthcare. For 20 plus years, we've been working on many fronts to fight expansion of punitiveness, shrink the criminal legal system, and imagine ways to deal with harm. And do it by telling the truth, treating all people with dignity, and including diverse representation of stakeholders in the design and decision-making process. Many things need to happen for us to course correct. The movement to reimagine and transform justice has created a playlist of all of the things we need to do. Mike Jacobson, wrote about downsizing the prisons, both in the physical footprint and the fiscal impact that it has. We talked tons about sentencing reform and decriminalization and addressing harm through other means like restorative justice. We've talked about addressing conditions of confinement because horrible conditions of confinement lead to bad outcomes because of the trauma induced by them. We talked about getting rid of collateral consequences because when the sentence is over, so should be the punishment. We've talked about supporting people in reentry. You heard a lot about that today, and that's a big part of what needs to happen in supervision. We've talked about what the paths really are to social equality and economic opportunity, education. And finally, after 20 years of doing this work, we have really understood that it can only happen if we honor and include and elevate the leadership of those people in the communities most affected by these issues. I've been waiting for this for a long time. I was on parole in the early 2000s, and had it not been for a parole officer that was way ahead of his time in thinking, 20 years ahead of his time, I would not have been able to work and go to school and meet all of the obligations of being on supervision, and which he used whatever powers he had as a New York State parole officer to make them as minimal as possible. And to always start out our conversations with how are you doing in school and what do you need? Not did you pay your parole fees and your restitution this month. EXiT is a project that understands that 4.5 million people under probation and parole supervision, a 400% increase in 2 decades, and twice the number of incarcerated people is a clear sign that supervision had become, but doesn't always have to be, part of the problem and not part of the solution. It's always courageous to acknowledge when you're part of a problem. With 4 out of every 10 people returning to prison or jail while under supervision, some of the strategy to decarcerate must be an overhaul of supervision practices. EXiT's founders knew that at minimum, leaders with professional and personal experience with community supervision need to collaborate in an effort to build a national movement that intends to transform probation and parole to be smaller, less punitive, and more hopeful, equitable, and restorative. Leaders like Vivian are far and few between in the world, not just the country. And we are just grateful for the energy he brings, even to jobs that are impossible to achieve. He has brought that energy to this group, and I hear it in all of the speakers and panelists, and I feel it in the room and in the energy of my colleagues, many of whom have been on supervision, who were in the room today, some who had to catch flights. There's just a couple of things I want to elevate about the significance of what you're doing here. Some take-home messages, if you will. Acknowledge the impact of what you're doing. It's not small, it's huge. It's really big. And it's not just one person at a time, it's systemic. And that's what makes it so smart. We often like to do things one person at a time in the United States, but rugged individuality is not going to get us where we need to be. It needs to be a collective effort. The main values of the statement that the people in this room have signed, and we hope many more will sign, takes courage. It provides a record of your stated values and holds you accountable to what you signed. It moves the conversation beyond people who all have the same ideas and backgrounds into a collective understanding of what is best for our entire society. And sometimes that can be discouraged by things like backlash. But I want to tell you, take this home with you. Don't be scared. Don't be scared of backlash. Because if you weren't being effective, no one would care. Backlash really only comes when change is actually already happening. And you're not alone. At every level and across disciplines, across issues, and across populations, collaborations that are determined to address the root cause of social inequality and lack of opportunity are building momentum. So EXiT is part of a larger trend for a more just society. The statement on the future of probation and parole in the United States held its inaugural meeting in December of 2019. And then in January 2020, well, a wake-up call, spurred by a series of horrific events and the pandemic that held us captive so we would have to pay attention. Naturally, the visceral and very visible response to unimaginable acts of hatred kept us reminded that the masses of people were not in agreement with abuse and hatred enacted by people in authority. A groundswell of activism and protest emerged. People got to work planning and organizing at the grassroots level, the local, state, and federal levels, and EXiT emerged and developed as proof of the fact that the instinct of people of good faith is to speak truth to power when they perceive injustice. Often the struggle is coming to agreement about how are we going to define injustice. efforts emerged to reclaim the hope of a country and its people, devoted to progress through shared values. And I'm really privileged to be part of the Columbia Justice Lab's Square One project, where we talk about values a lot, some of which are respect for human dignity, shared power in democracy, and truth-telling about our history. The statement on the future of probation and parole in the United States is a public declaration of intent that calls for values, to use our values to transform a system. Telling the truth about what the challenge is, agreeing on these shared values that will address the challenge. What do you stand for? Collaborating with diverse stakeholders leads you to where you need and want to go. But there is a hard part to this. In a country moving in the direction of a candid conversation about the roles of history and race and social inequality, we have to tolerate that conversation even when it's uncomfortable. We didn't talk about the work that is yet to be done in states that haven't necessarily signed on to this new vision. But in order to propel us forward, we must remember that there really is a lot of work to be done, and there are people who are still suffering greatly. At the time EXiT was visualized, around the same period, there was an op-ed co-written by Deanna Hoskins of Just Leadership USA and Vinnie Sherrell, co-founder of EXiT, about a situation in Milwaukee. There's a facility called the Milwaukee Secure Detention Facility, where supervision and revocations were so out of control in that state that they had to build a facility just to house people under supervision. The facility has a capacity of over 1,000, and it's known for brutal and inhumane conditions. More than half the people at MSDF are there because of a revocation. 86% are caged without having been convicted of a new crime. Within that group of people, 77% are black, 6.4% of the population of Wisconsin is black. Wisconsin imprisons 1 in 36 black adults. No state has a higher rate. So that, and conditions in many other states, is the reason that these racially charged events must remind us to have these hard conversations, that our criminal legal system, the system of mass incarceration for which we have had to invent new language to talk about, is rooted in disparate policies and practices that surveil some communities more than others, that punish some communities more than others, that incarcerate some communities more than others. We can only reimagine a different system if we are accountable to these facts and truths. How will EXiT respond? Moving away from punitiveness is a priority in this room, that is obvious. It is also a priority at the federal level. At the opening of the Second Chance Month this year, Amy Solomon, Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General of the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs, said, "We need to balance accountability with opportunity and make sure everyone has the tools and on-ramps they need to build productive, successful lives." Diversity of the work is the core of success. Diversity of ideologies, approaches, backgrounds, and particularly partnerships with communities most affected by those who are previously or currently under supervision. We've heard about a lot of good things today. Defense bars advocating for limited conditions for their clients, defending people facing incarceration for technical violations, and speaking out about policy that could shift experiences more broadly. We've heard from survivors reminding us of the importance of breaking cycles of harm rather than perpetuating them with more punitiveness. District attorneys are recognizing the importance of limiting punitiveness and opening pathways to services, healing, and reintegration, things that actually produce safety. The story we heard from Ramsey County was inspiring. Leaders from all sides are changing policy across the country, here in New York and in California. Many people in this room involved in those efforts. You are courageous. You are courageous leaders. And every signatory to the EXiT statement has already said what needs to be said. Michael Nail said, supervised individuals have so many conditions, such a heavy weight on their shoulders, that it's nearly impossible for them to succeed. A supervised person said, it feels helpless sometimes. My family felt helpless. Another said, it's like I'm walking on eggshells. And Michael Nail comes back and reminds us that every individual can change. Our role and responsibility is to provide the opportunity for change and work with them to make that positive change. People are not asking to be released from accountability. They just want to be treated as individuals. Every case different. Reasons to reduce the amount of punitiveness. And because education is the thing I care about the most, I was so proud to see Naquasia featured in the EXiT promotional video. Her words are so powerful. She was incarcerated at 19. She says, I was a child that made a bad decision, a poor choice. My brain wasn't even fully developed, and I'm 36 now. I have a bachelor's degree in sociology. I have a minor in psychology. I am an activist. I'm an organizer. I just want to be a better woman, a better mother, a better daughter, a better sister, a better friend, a better advocate, a better organizer, and a better student. I did 15 years. When is it going to end? I love Barbara Broderick's comment in that same video because she hopes that people in this field will begin to see supervised people as our brothers, our sisters, our moms, our dads. Human beings. They make mistakes. Sometimes tragic ones, but they deserve an opportunity to move on with their lives. And there's more. It is a frightening place to be, in that big chasm between what we're familiar with, what we already know, what we understand, and that which is unfamiliar, misunderstood, because we have not lived it yet. But we are the ones we've been waiting for. Progress will come only when we have and maintain the courage to live in that uncomfortable chasm. The EXiT video that I love so much closes with a quote that can be attributed to a first century Jewish scholar named Hillel the Elder. If not you, then who? If not now, when? Thank you. We thank you all for coming here today to sharing this gathering. I think it's been 3 years since you've been in the same room. Thank you again to Kendra and Akasua, to the entire EXiT team, to the probation and parole, let me get this right, the probation and parole team at the Justice Lab, and of course to Vinnie, co-founder of the Justice Lab, and to the chairs of EXiT. All of the signatories, the panelists, please travel safely and have a blessed evening.